On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
It's one of the toughest things that I had to understand the process of letting people do their thing, and they probably wouldn't do it the same way I would. It's one of the toughest things to do as a leader, especially like this being your baby. I always say there's two things that people don't really understand is you protect your business and you protect your family. Those are the two things that when you have this, that's what you're essentially.
It's the survival mode in you, for sure.
Yeah. And so you can't control everything.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. Today, I've got Ben Labra here on the King stage. Ben, my brother, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Chaz. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Well, we appreciate you being here. I know that it's not the easiest thing to do, peel away from a wonderful organization, but sometimes it's what we got to do to serve others. So we appreciate that. Ben, tell us what kind of business that you got, brother.
Well, Gesture is sort of the new gift-giving application, or the easiest way to gift give, that's the best way to kind of put it, is we basically just sort of condensed a bunch of different types of methods, such as sending flowers, bottle of bubbly, wine, some sweets into that whole process, and just put it into the form of an app, a mobile app. And whenever something comes up, such as an anniversary, birthday, promotion, or just because, we basically have given people the way to just go to the app and press one button, put in either a phone number or an email address, and click next and send. And it's that simple. So we've basically just sort of Uberized the gifting process. The coolest part to that whole thing is that you don't need an address anymore. You don't need personal or private information. You can just use someone's email or phone number. And if you don't have that, you have them on DM, such as through LinkedIn or any messaging platform or dating app. You can actually send a gift right through a DM, as they say, slide into the DMs. It's that simple, that easy, that cool.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the simple and easy, I get it. But that last part, that cool, like that totally sounds like a move that I would make if I was on a dating app. Now, I haven't been dating for a long time. I've been married to my wife almost 15 years. We dated for 3 years before that. We got married when I was 12. Not really, but basically. So it's been a long time, but I think that would be a move that I would think I would make.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular feature in the app currently. I mean, it's just people don't like giving out their personal info, but yet, someone still wants to make that sort of that message like, hey, I want to take you out. And yeah, it's the easiest way to do it. Gesture is sort of built for that. It's pretty cool.
I love the angle because gift giving is huge. Obviously off air, we talked about just my history with edible arrangements. Obviously that's a big deal. Anniversaries, birthdays, all the things, right? But the angle that you've taken, I think, is super creative, and it lines up with Gen X, right?
And Gen X, Z, yeah,
and Gen Z, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Sorry, Gen Z, yeah. Gen X is probably
that's me.
I was gonna say that. No, that's they're they're.
But
they're Facebook.
They're probably a good 20-25% of our user base. Actually, it's
really
so,
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say that's probably more of an edible arrangements target is the Gen X, the Gen X mom, really, let's just be honest. Like they're the ones organizing all the gifts for the family. So,
sure.
Okay. The technology play, right? Taking an industry that's years old. We love to give gifts and you're Uberizing it. I love that language. At this level, I want to know, before we kind of get into the history, how you built this, why you built it, that type of thing. I want to know a different why. I want to know your why. Like you're at this level, you've had some Uber success, to play on your words. Why are you doing this? Why are you still doing it? What's the bigger picture for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the common answer is to solve a problem is sort of the typical textbook entrepreneur sort of answer. But I think it stems all the way back to the time that I was probably 13 or 14 years old, just sort of growing up in a single parent household and really seeing my mom, work 3 jobs. And, I think there's if I had to kind of narrow it down, I mean, I saw my mom work 3 jobs to kind of keep a roof over our head. And it was, then, I wish, I mean, I don't know what I didn't know then now, but I mean, it was kind of like, I've never saw her sort of rewarded, where people were able to send flowers, because then it was extremely expensive. You have to call the phone number, look through a catalog. And it's, to see her work 3 jobs and keep a roof over her head as I was growing up, it taught me sort of the hustle mentality of working hard. But at the same time, like, it was just the reward factor of like, I wish there was just an easy way, even at that time, to send her some sort of gesture of an appreciation. And so that's kind of where this started in terms of why. And then as, the industry evolved, and, you can sort of like kind of fast forwarding throughout the years, you can get anything at the tap of a button or a click of a remote. I was telling someone the other day, I remember when I was a kid watching just like basic cable, and I was like, wish there was a way that you can order a movie just tapping a button and any movie you wanted, and it's here. You can do that now. But I was just like, those are things that I thought about back in the past, is how can we really streamline this process and make it extremely easy and simplistic. So yeah, I think there's a bunch, but I would have to sort of say that it goes back to that sort of just way of being able to reward people, or show appreciation in just a much easier way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Yeah, and it's convenience, right? Like that's where technology comes in, is that we as humans, we demand a higher and higher and higher level of convenience, and which forces a tech play like this to come in. I don't want to make a phone call. I don't want to have to look through a catalog. I want to be able to jump on my app and pick out something and send it without even knowing their address. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, kind of funny story, when I do get people that call and they want to send something, you wouldn't believe the number of people that call that do not know the address.
Yeah.
They say, oh, well, it's over at this so-and-so. And they go, okay. You'd like us to deliver it there, right? Do you have an address?
Right. Or the amount of people that call to say, hey, Chaz, what's your address? And you're not working from, an office location anymore. You're working from home. So, you might have done a ton of business together, but it's still kind of weird to give out your home address to someone that really don't know. But at the same time, they mean nothing but good things and, good intention. But it's weird to give out your home address to someone that you're just essentially in business with, right? It's one of those things that, we're privacy focused. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. So let's go a little bit more practical here. As you've been building this business, maybe especially early on, let me know of a good decision. Tell the audience something that you did, that you just do it over and over again. It was such a clean decision, something that they can implement in their business.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that comes to mind, just really thinking through the process, was during the pandemic, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I do some guest lecturing, different schools and, things like that. And one of the things that's always asked is, when do you really know, a lot of founders sort of start a business and they sort of adopt this title of founder, CEO, call myself a CEO, but it's not until you really are faced with a CEO type of decision where, I always recommend to founders, I'm like, don't call yourself a CEO until you've actually earned that title. And that's only something that you can essentially promote yourself to, I guess. And Sure. What I mean by that is, in these sort of businesses, the reason why you're a CEO is you've got to make CEO types of decisions. And going into that, at the beginning of I remember we had raised some capital, things were starting to sort of move through the process. We were in, I think, 2 cities at the time. We had started in New York when Gesture first launched. And then, we started to make our way through LA and Denver. And then, came March, beginning of March of 2020. And, everything was like, hey, everyone's got to go home, shutting down. And New York was one of those cities that was hit hard. But I remember, the first couple of weeks, I jumped on so many podcasts and I attended so many online sort of just like these types of like guest exhibits where you're listening to VCs talk. And I remember about 90% of the stuff that I heard from VCs and even our own investors that, just conserve, cut, lay off and try and ride this out. We're not sure where this is going to go. funds are going to dry up. And that was sort of the kind of advice that, startups, especially early startups, were getting. And the decision that I had to make at that time was I had to essentially roll the dice and decide whether or not we were going to cut. I think at the time, Gesture had about 60-ish people that were working for the company at the time. And so I would say about 95% of those people were in-house. They were in one of our offices in New York. So we were just pretty massive. And I remember I had to make a decision on where to reallocate resources to, or if we were just going to cut back. And so I remember there were two things that I did. Instead of cutting staff, we did sort of the complete opposite. I ended up taking my salary and reducing it down to almost nothing. And the same thing with one of my co-founders. We both agreed to that. And then what we did is we took what we weren't getting paid a ton of money. It was like $30,000 a year or something like that. And so what we did is we took that and we ended up hiring a ton of salespeople to come in and make phone calls. And then I invested into better technology, CRM technology at the time. I think it was HubSpot at the time. But basically, like what we did is we essentially hired a bunch of sales. I think we doubled our staff size to like 20 or 25 salespeople. These were interns, these were students, these were college students. Seasoned salespeople. But the whole purpose for that is when we got these salespeople in, instead of just sending an email to our customers that, hey, Gesture is here, you can't be with your loved one, you can't be with your special people because everyone was separated. I said, we really put out this message where we picked the phone and we called all of our customers. And these were probably at the time about 2,000 or 3,000 customers. And we let them know Gesture is here. Send a Gesture. And we essentially grew that summer, and probably during the 2020, during the pandemic, we grew about 1,500%. And we essentially just exploded. And that was probably one of the hardest but best decisions that I had ever made. And that's when I really, took myself from just having founder on my business card to actually CEO. That was a CEO type of call. And that was one of those things where I kind of felt like, man, I actually had to, roll the dice and hope that this was going to work. Otherwise, I think at the time I knew about maybe 12 or 15 other startups that I had essentially that we had grown up together. They all are no longer in business. They all failed that year. But so I remember that was one of the best decisions that I ever made, and that was during the pandemic, and and paid off quite a bit actually. So here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I hear two things. Number one, I heard you say I pressed into growth when most people were running, trying to conserve, which I think is a great mindset. I think growth mindset, if you think in growth mindset all the time, obviously you can't be irresponsible, but if you think in growth mindset, you're never in conservation. When people are tightening things up, you're trying to take market share is generally what you just described that you did. And then the second piece is, which I think is applicable to every single business listening, is if you've got leads, you got customers, get on the phone. Because you can get on the phone, you can call, you can cold call. The phone didn't turn off during the pandemic. Your customers didn't go away. They were still there. And in fact, if anything, you were literally what they needed, very similar to Edible Arrangements in the time where it's like, man, I can't go be with my buddies that we bowl with on Thursdays, or I can't go be with grandma, or I can't, whoever it was, need to send them a Gesture. So I just love not only that you were there for people during a very difficult time, but also that you made that call, because I think that call right there, that can be applicated, or it can be applied to anybody listening right here today. They might be a little nervous about it, but I think they could hear it in your voice that maybe you were too. And that really anytime that you invest in sales, really, the push, the literal manual, let me go physically go get new customers is probably always, for the most part, going to pay off. You can clean up the mess later.
And that was the thing too. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we were a consumer to consumer. We're not a B2B business, not then, we are now as well. But, that B2B came out of that decision as well. But we were a consumer business. I mean, it's not often. I mean, how many times have you gotten a call from Uber or Lyft? And that's the same type of, that's our user base. It said, how many times have DoorDash called you and said, hey, do you want to order food? It was one of those gutsy things that, is sort of unorthodox. It's not, it's not standard. It's not typical, but we did it, and we did it in a way to where like customers were were pretty happy to hear from us, and that there was an option out there. We're on demand, so it wasn't like it was like a 2 or 3 day wait or later that day, or you got to order by 2. I mean, we controlled the logistics side as well. So we were out there delivering within 30 minutes to an hour. That's how fast we were able to get those, those flowers, wine, champagne, whatever it is. And we sort of pivoted a little bit, and we started to deliver some care packages, with, whatever Clorox wipes were left in the stores. Like we did it all, man. I mean, it was pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great move to make in that moment, but your core business remains the same, is that whether it's Clorox wipes or whether it's flowers, it's a gesture. So I love that. Yep. Let's flip the coin. Ben, tell me about a bad decision, one that didn't go so well that we can learn from.
Yeah. So I think there's quite a few that come to mind, but if I had to, I think it was, I think it was just one of those things that I feel like that I guess would be considered a bad decision is, I'm a big people person. I like to take care of people and make sure people are taken care of. And, I think one of the things that I did is we probably were maybe a little too, we weren't conservative enough around like how we took care of our employees, and knowing that we were still a startup, and, we provided too much even with benefits in terms of like before the pandemic. I noticed, I'm just giving you an example. So we had quite a few employees at the time, and we were essentially paying for lunch and those sort of things. And, I just didn't, it's part of the war on talent that you want to like get good people and you want to retain them and those sort of things. But yeah, I just think that we sort of were maybe just a little too excessive with that at the time, and thought that that's what people wanted and that's what they needed. But we didn't really get down to the core value of like why people were doing what they're doing. And, maybe that wasn't really the most important thing. And we thought it was, and we were just sort of like burning unnecessary cash to try and keep people happy. And that's really not what they wanted. When it came down to it, when everyone had to go home and work from home, we weren't doing lunch and those things anymore. And they were probably just as happy, if not happier. Right. So, I think that's one. And, the other second thing that I'd add to that is just, I think it was just a matter of like not talking to people as often as we should as leaders and as managers, and really not uncovering some of those things that the people are unhappy about or are happy with. They always say, don't take your eye off the people that are extremely happy. Just because they're happy, you should probably invest more time with them. So I think those are sort of some of the mistakes that I can kind of like point out right from the very beginning that I would definitely, we've improved on, but definitely need to, if they're caught early enough, you can save yourself a lot of time and money. So
yeah, no, you're 100% right. I can remember a pretty large organization that I worked for many years ago. And, it seemed like every little thing that you would do, then it became an expectation, right? So whether it's lunch or this or that, or then now it just becomes normal. And then you had to level it up again and again and again, which it's not necessarily that you don't want to do that, but are we just leveling up with a bunch of stuff that people didn't really need or want anyway, when there's probably a greater, some people probably wanted to work from home. Some people probably wanted a flexible schedule, or, the other things that matter in life more than, lunch.
It's like the intrinsic versus extrinsic value of what people really see. Some people are driven extrinsically and some people are driven extrinsically. And, when you really understand that as a manager or leader, you can take your people much further. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. What process do you have now as, obviously CEO, as you said, but around making good decisions? How do you make decisions now? What process do you follow?
Well, I think, everything is essentially calculated to a certain extent, calculated decision making. But I think part of being a visionary is you got to take risks. You got to be a big risk taker and decide how much you want to push the envelope, and not being afraid of taking risks. As they say, scared money doesn't make money, and at the same time, like, you've almost have to have a contingency plan in place and not just sort of really rely on, luck to a certain extent, but in terms of the decisions itself, I sometimes get caught up with the bright, shiny lights of things. And, and
we
one
all.
thing too is, Yeah, well, you got to be careful as a founder owner because you have the power to change anything. And being a product owner is, as they say, if you really compare this to agile, sort of the methodology of agile when it comes to like project management, everything you do in an organization essentially has a sense of project management to whether you're rolling out, an ad campaign or you're rolling out paid ads or you're doing, anything in general, technology you're building. You're the product owner, and the product owner can technically come in and change anything. If you ever worked for, let's just say, a dev shop, which basically, they're building a mobile application for a company that hired them, they always tell the product owner that, you can come in and change this, but this is going to add time and it's going to add money. But sometimes when you're the internal product owner, you can come in and make those changes, and those changes will throw everyone off, especially if there's a huge team. So in terms of making those changes, it's always involving the right people, asking for input. Sometimes you just got to do it, but I think it's important that if depending on how large your team is, or that you're including, some of those changes in the team and more with the team and the people that have those sort of key decision-making skills or factors. But,
right.
I think it's just a matter of taking risks as well. So, I take a lot of risks. I push the envelope. I think one of the other things is, if there is a specific change that I really need to see done, that might mean that I might have to put in an extra 8 hours at the end of the night to do it. And I'm the one who actually does it, so that the example is set from the beginning. So it's kind of a whirlwind of an answer, but
it was good. It was really, really good, actually. And so I want to give the listener a couple of takeaways from that, because you're right. Especially about being the product owner. And then even like what you said there at the end, is sometimes you have to commit and you do it yourself, which isn't always necessarily the best option, but it's a have to option sometimes, especially to keep the team focused. And so the listener, being a pretty small shop, less than $1 million in revenue, generally speaking, they probably shouldn't change a whole bunch, really. And I've, in some of my startups, I had the same issue where you're idea this and idea that, and you're testing. There's a difference between testing and then changing dramatic things. And but once you get something that's working, you need to stay in that lane. You need to like see it through. And that could mean, like for a simple, electrician, you stay with the same 3 service calls, and you don't go outside of that for the first million or for the first year. And I think that even me personally, I'm learning the value of that more and more, because like you said, you can come in and you can change anything at any time, and you don't realize that it's causing confusion in your team, and it's delaying, which is costing you more money. And then the last thing that you said there, as far as like sometimes just doing it yourself. Okay, so I understand that I want to change something. Fine, fair enough. But I can't give it to somebody right now because it'll confuse the team. It causes more time. I just need to get it done myself. There's a layer of that is just ownership. So thank you for sharing that. I want to go over to the speed round. The speed round questions will be a little bit different angle coming at you, but my first one is, in your business, obviously being a tech play and this product that you're servicing across the country, what's the most important KPI? What would you track if you could only pick one thing?
Man, in this case, we are a for-profit business, so I would, if I had to start somewhere, it would be revenue, definitely. With revenue, you can sort of kind of tell it a different story based on, user growth, user acquisition, how many daily users that you're adding to the, customers, transactions. So if I had to choose one, it'd probably be revenue. That's probably what would be for me, for sure.
Yeah, and you gave us several examples there of what flows after that for you. So I think that's super applicable. What book would you recommend, Ben, or maybe a resource for an entrepreneur who's trying to grow their business?
Wow. Let's see here. I would probably, there's so many. 0 to 1 is a great book, Lean Startup. It's just sort of depending on the type of business that you're starting, but
sure.
I think the Lean Startup gives the very basics of like, what you need is not. It taught me a lot. Really understanding MVP and, what that means. And or, I would say probably one more. I'm sorry, Blitzscaling will probably be another one by Reed, just because that's what you want to do in a business early on. It gives you the great examples of PayPal and everything else in terms of what they did. And, sorry, that was more than one, but
it's all good. You're over delivering. Over delivering. We'll put them all in the show notes so that people can easily get those. Those are all great recommendations. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
Oh, man, it's crucial. Just to give you sort of an example, I have someone who's close to me, a family member of mine. He started a company, tech company. He said he was driven based on like watching me do things. He's about 10 years younger than I am, but one of the things that him and I just sort of reconciled our relationship not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, actually, because he learned a tough lesson by one being, I think, prideful, and number two, not taking advantage of the resources that he had in front of him,
Sure.
whether it was learning more about raising capital or, making the same mistakes, and especially that fact he was a tech startup. And so, he came to the table and said, hey, it's one of the things that I noticed that I need more help with, relying on those that have actually done it or that are doing it. And it's important to put yourself out there because you never know where it's going to come from. Right. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I get invited to dinners and events all the time. And as busy as I am, there are times where I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go tonight, but I do. And there's just, it's because it's a great group of people and, other people can, I guess the thing that I'll end with is other people can see what you can't when they're looking at it from the outside looking in. If you think about it, like I'm in this office right now, I can't see down the hall other than what I see right in front of me, but even my peripheral view, I can't. But when someone is standing in the hallway looking in and say, hey, Ben, come outside, there's something at the end of the hall that's great, they can see a bunch more stuff that I can't. And so that sometimes outside perspective is what's needed. And you can apply that to anything, especially networking and really just reaching out to resources. Yeah. Yeah,
that's huge. One thing that you just said that it likened in my brain to something that I've said recently about just fitness and working out is just about like, I'm never disappointed that I do it. Right. Like always beforehand, it's always 5:30 when the alarm says get up and work out, where I'm, that version of myself is like, nah, not today. You're tired. You don't feel good. You were up late last night working, whatever the excuse is. We had, baby crying, whatever. But the 7 a.m. version of me is like, man, I'm so glad I did that. And so it's the same thing that you just said with networking, creating relationships. Really, it's never the dinner that you want to go and put the effort into, but it's the relationships later that came from that. You're like, man, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah, because you also got to you also have to essentially apply a sense of control of what you're looking for from, because there are times where, I may travel to go see my parents in Colorado. They live in Denver and I might go see them. And I work from one of the WeWorks that are out there because that's where we work out from here. And what I'll do is basically make an event of something there where I might go talk to the front desk and the leads there and say, hey, do you mind if I sponsor a happy hour tomorrow? Nothing planned, just want to buy a couple bottles of wine, throw some gesture signs up, give away some t-shirts, nothing crazy. And they're like, yeah, right. And then basically people walk up, grab some chips and dip and some wine. And, I grew up and give a shirt away here, but we might end up walking away with 50 downloads. It cost us $75, right? And so It's about making the opportunity out of every opportunity that's there. You're making something out of it. You're finding a way on how to apply your business towards that.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Okay, I got one last question here for you, Ben. If you could whisper in the younger Ben's ear, what would you say?
Get out of people's way. Yeah, get out of people's way. And I think there's a time and a place for that as you go through your entrepreneurial journey. Yes, at the very beginning, you're doing everything yourself. But I think one of the things that, at least for me, is that even now we're at a point where I have, for instance, a chief sales officer. I have, a chief marketing officer. I have people that are in these roles of decision making. They're hired because they have a skill set. Sometimes I find myself getting in their way at times. And there's one guy in particular that he, when I hired him, and it was a sales role, and I said, hey, how many phone calls are people making? And he said, he said, you're a CEO. I'm say how he said it, but he said, why are you asking me how many phone calls these people are essentially making? Go out and do what you need to do. Let me take care of that, and let me do what you brought me in here to do. Stop asking, first tier level questions and go out and be a freaking CEO. And I was just like, holy cow. So I think it's just getting out of the way and letting people do what they need to do, and still never taking your eye off of it completely. But it's crucial. So at that point, get out of your own way, succeed. So
Yeah, it's super powerful. And you gave such a great example there. I think that even in organizations that I've worked with some pretty big names, those are the type of questions, that were being asked. Low level, tier one, as you said. And it's difficult because that person that
it's so hard to let go, man.
It is.
Man.
But to your point now, Ben, the guy that challenged you on that, because I was in that situation. And if you can't because if you bring in that guy, the younger version of me who was that guy, he's capable. And why'd you bring him in if you want to look over his shoulder for a $400 decision?
No, man. And it's one of the toughest things that I had to understand the process of letting people do their thing, and they probably wouldn't do it the same way I would, because I've always been a sales guy. I know what sales is all about, and I still sell to this day, right? But I mean, it's one of the toughest things to do as a leader, especially like this being your baby. Like, no one cares. I always say there's two things that people don't really understand is you protect your business and you protect your family. Those are the two things that, when you have this, like that's what you're essentially kind of.
It's the survival mode in you, for sure.
Yeah. And so like you can't control everything. So it's tough. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, man. Well, how can the listener find you? Obviously, I'm sure we can download the Gesture app, but give us all the details on how to find the app, how to find you as an entrepreneur. Maybe they want to reach out, that type of thing.
Definitely. So, of course, you can download the app in the Apple Store as well as on Google Play. We're on both. And check out the website, gesture.vip. We named it VIP because everyone's a VIP. The way we look at it, just like the VIP. But ultimately, I'm on about every single social platform you can really think about. But just message me on LinkedIn. My email is ben@gesture.vip. Feel free to email me there or hit me up on LinkedIn. But yeah, I'm a sociable person. I love people. So always willing to take some time and help and set aside the time. Typically, I actually take time on Saturdays as sort of a way for me to give back and sit down with newer entrepreneurs, people that are thinking about an idea. And sometimes I poke holes in those ideas. I used to be on the investor side. I used to do investing, and I had a fund at one point before the pandemic, so I know all about the sort of what the VCs look for, and I can be a good resource for that. So yeah, always willing to help. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, Ben, you've been incredible. Thank you for just your time and of course the knowledge and just the opportunity to hear your story and of course just in an awesome business. I think that you're only seeing the beginning of what you guys are going to be able to accomplish with your business. So that's super exciting. Thank you for being here. We wish you nothing but blessing on you, your family, your business, your team, the whole deal.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Gathering the Kings. We hope you got a ton of value today and learned a thing or two about taking your business to 7 figures and beyond. If you desire more and want a community around you to help you get there, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. That's gatheringthekings.com. And I want you to apply for our next Becoming a King 90-day intensive. We are extremely exclusive by nature as a group. What that means is that we're really wanting only the entrepreneurs who take their business and targets super serious to apply. So if that's you think you got what it takes to level up your business, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com and apply. And we will see you on the other side.